Jania lives in a small, humble apartment with her sick daughter, Arya. Arya has to sleep wearing headphones to block out the loud music from their neighbor's apartment, which can easily be heard through the thin walls. Early that morning, Jania helps Arya bathe and gently warns her not to damage her fragile science project, knowing they can't afford to replace it. Arya also reminds her mother about the lunch money her teacher keeps asking for. Jania eventually grows frustrated upon learning that the teacher publicly humiliated her daughter for not bringing it. On their way out, Jania gives a few coins to Benny, one of her neighbors in a wheelchair. Their landlady witnesses this and angrily shouts at her, asking Jania for her rent money and telling her that the eviction process has already begun. Jania promises to bring the rent money during her lunch break once she gets her paycheck. She then pleads with the landlady to ask the neighbors to lower their music, but the woman coldly refuses, insisting that the neighbors have every right since they pay their rent on time. At school, Jania assures Arya she'll return during lunch with the money. After dropping off her daughter, the school principal watches her with a confused face but says nothing. When she arrives at work, the store is busy and Jania is immediately rushed to her station by her manager, Richard, who shows no concern for her situation. She faces harsh treatment from both customers and her boss, simply for not moving faster. When one customer tries to pay for all her groceries with a benefits card, Jania informs her that some items aren't eligible. The woman storms out, and her husband violently throws a bottle at Jania in anger. Arriving just then, Richard scolds Jania for the mess and orders her to clean it quickly, as other customers grow impatient. As Jania searches for the cleaning supplies, her coworker meets her and offers to lend her money, but Jania declines, knowing her friend is struggling as well and that they are due to be paid later that day. Suddenly, the school calls her and informs her that not only does Arya not have her lunch money, but she also has a suspicious injury on her forehead. Jania explains that it was a bathroom accident, but the teachers remain concerned. That was when Richard finds her on the phone and forces her to hang up. She begs him for time off to resolve the school issue, and he reluctantly grants her a 30-minute break, but refuses to release her paycheck early. So, Jania hurries to a nearby ATM to withdraw her last $47 for Arya, only to find her account balance too low to make a withdrawal. The bank manager explains that the ATM won't dispense cash if it would drop the account below its minimum balance. Seeing no alternative, Jania chooses to close the account, but she is told that she would have to wait her turn in the long queue. Out of options and pressed for time, she leaves the bank empty-handed. She eventually arrives at the school, only to see that her daughter is being taken away by Child Protective Services. Though she pleads desperately, trying to explain that Arya is sick and requires special medication, her pleas prove futile. Overwhelmed by the weight of her collapsing world, Jania breaks down, ranting about the 2 jobs she juggles just to survive. In the end, she picks up Arya's school bag from the floor and races back to work through the heavy rain. In her frantic state, she accidentally cuts off another driver named Oliver, nearly causing a collision. Enraged by her reckless driving, Oliver throws a drink at her car and vows to make her pay, as he aggressively pursues her through the streets. Then, in a sudden reckless move, Oliver rams his car into hers, causing Jania's vehicle to spin out on the wet road. Though she regains control, her car stalls and refuses to start again. When she steps out to inspect the engine, a police officer approaches her and Jania tells her about the man chasing her. But to her horror, Oliver is also a police officer. He coldly threatens her, warning that he could find a way to kill her legally. The officer dismisses Oliver, but then asks for Jania's driving license. When she provides them, the officer tells her that her documents are expired, and despite her promise to renew them after receiving her paycheck, the officer impounds her vehicle, leaving her stranded. Jania is forced to walk back to work in the rain, only to face Richard's wrath for taking 2 hours instead of her allotted 30-minute break. Without hesitation, he fires her and cruelly refuses to hand over her paycheck, insisting it would be mailed to her, even though it was right on his table. Devastated, Jania returns home only to find all her possessions scattered outside, drenched and ruined by the rain. The landlady has already enforced the eviction. Totally overwhelmed, Jania screams in helpless frustration as she gathers what she can. Now determined not to leave without her hard-earned money, Jania storms back to the grocery store and confronts Richard. At that moment, 2 armed robbers enter, and one of them calls Jania by name after seeing her badge. They force Richard to empty the store's safe and demand Jania's bag to carry the stolen money. But she fights back fiercely, unwilling to give up the bag containing Arya's essential medicine. In the struggle, Jania wrestles the gun from one of the robbers and shoots him. The second man quickly runs away, but instead of gratitude, Richard accuses her of orchestrating the robbery because the men knew her name, and he immediately calls the police. As Richard continues to berate her, telling her that she rot in prison, something inside Jania snaps. Then, in a daze, she turns the weapon on him and pulls the trigger. She then grabs her paycheck and rushes to the bank. Though the security guard informs her the bank is closed, Nicole, who is the manager, takes pity and allows her inside. But when the teller demands for her identification, Jania realizes her documents were taken with the impounded car. She tries to explain the situation, but the teller dismisses her pleas, and in her final moment of pure frustration, Jania reveals she is still holding the gun. As the bank teller discreetly presses the emergency alarm, Nicole immediately contacts the authorities, telling them that Jania is armed with a bomb after confusing Arya's science project for an explosive device. Meanwhile, detectives Raymond and Grimes were reviewing the crime scene footage from the grocery store, where Jania's involvement is clearly captured on security cameras. During their investigation, Jania's co-worker passionately defends her, insisting she would never commit such acts, though her emotional reaction raises Grimes' suspicions that she may be hiding something. However, Raymond senses that there is more to this, and she tells Grimes that they'll have to dig further. Their next lead takes them to Jania's apartment, where her belongings are scattered on the street. While searching through her things, they discover Arya's medication, and Benny, the man in a wheelchair, speaks warmly about Jania, telling the officers about Arya's illness. Despite their efforts, the landlady refuses to let them search the apartment. Just then, the detectives are alerted about the situation unfolding at the bank. In the meantime, inside the bank, the tellers, who think that they are being robbed, begin handing over all the cash to Jania. Confused by their action, Jania insists she only wants her paycheck cashed. So Nicole quickly hands her phone to the security guard to get further instructions and tries to encourage the other customers to quietly leave, but they choose to remain, as they are not aware how dangerous the situation is. At that moment, Jania's mental state continues to deteriorate as she rants in frustration and frightening everyone in the bank. Nicole eventually manages to explain to the teller that Jania only wants the money from her paycheck, but despite this, Jania remains emotionally unstable and the customers and staff fear the worst. Meanwhile outside, the police have fully surrounded the bank. Grimes tells the chief that Jania orchestrated the earlier robbery, but Raymond tells them that she thinks Jania is simply experiencing a severe psychological breakdown triggered by her desperate circumstances. Back inside the bank, a nervous customer finally notices Jania's gun and impulsively tries to disarm her. In the scuffle, the gun accidentally discharges into the air, and this sends both the customer and the security guard running outside in panic. The customer later explains to the officers that the gun went off by accident and criticizes the guard for not doing anything to help. Meanwhile, the terrified tellers hide behind the counters as Jania continues to shout, still desperately demanding her daughter's lunch money. Then her attention is drawn to a live news broadcast reporting the incident, labeling her a murderer and a bank robber. Stunned by this, Jania freezes in disbelief. When the police call the bank, she quickly hangs up after realizing it is the police. So the police decided to bring in a negotiator with specialized equipment, but Raymond persuades the chief to let her lead the conversation, believing Jania would respond better to another woman. Eventually, Jania agrees to speak with Raymond as she asks about the gunshot. Jania frantically tries to explain that it was accidental, but her panic only intensifies. Raymond, who is now convinced of her innocence, speaks to her calmly, framing the entire situation as a misunderstanding. Yet, when she encourages her to surrender peacefully, Jania's fragile state completely breaks once more. She starts to grow increasingly unstable, as she is convinced that the authorities only want to lock her away, just as they had taken her daughter. When Raymond pleads with her to release the other customers, Jania insists she isn't holding anyone hostage and abruptly hangs up. Nicole eventually hands her the cash from her paycheck, and Jania immediately separates $40 for Aria's school lunch and tells Nicole to help her deliver it, knowing the police won't let her near her daughter. While she looks at the TV news once more, Jania sees the police positioning themselves and orders the tellers to shut the front blinds. Unknown to her, one of the tellers discreetly starts streaming the situation live. The police, who were now observing through security cameras, remain focused on the suspected bomb. As the tensions rise, an elderly customer asks to sit, prompting Jania to instruct Nicole to bring her a chair, showing that she still cares about the people around her. The elderly couple pleaded with her to release them, but Jania refuses, as she fears that the police will kill her once she's alone. Despite this, the couple decided to run for the exit, and this made Jania quickly lock the door to prevent further escapes. Suddenly, Aria's project starts beeping, triggering panic among Nicole and the police, but Jania calmly shuts it off. As she looks for space to think, Jania walks into a back office. Though the tellers see a chance to flee, Nicole warns them to stay, telling them that the elderly woman can't run. Moments later, Jania returns with chairs for everyone, explaining she knows the hardship of standing all day. Observing this via the CCTV cameras, Raymond points out to the chief that real criminals don't show such compassion. Meanwhile, a tactical officer shows them the bank's blueprints and suggests using flash grenades to storm the building, but the chief hesitates, unwilling to risk it with a suspected bomb on site. Some officers advocate calling the FBI, but Raymond firmly opposes, believing the FBI would handle the situation with unnecessary force. She argues that Jania is only a desperate woman and not a criminal. This made the chief agree to let Raymond lead the negotiation. So, she contacts the bank again. Jania initially resists, but eventually answers after Nicole convinces her that the police might genuinely help. On the call, Jania finally shares the full weight of her struggles. She explains her encounter with Oliver, her desperate attempts to cash her paycheck, Aria's medical needs, her wrongful eviction, and the unbearable pressures of working multiple jobs. Meanwhile, the live stream from the teller's phone rapidly spreads across the city, drawing widespread sympathy for her plight. Overwhelmed, Raymond responds with deep empathy, revealing her own difficult upbringing and promising to help if Jania surrenders. But Jania wouldn't agree, and she adamantly refuses to come out while the officer who threatened her remains outside, then slams the phone down. Devastated, Raymond steps out of the command truck to collect herself. When the chief eventually hears about the viral live stream, he immediately orders his team to jam the signal in order to contain the situation. Jania soon realizes that the security cameras inside the bank are still active. So she asks Nicole to lead her to the switch and shuts them all off, leaving the police blind to what's happening inside. One of the tellers seizes the moment to attempt an escape, but the door remains locked. With the cameras down, Jania returns to the others, who begin requesting to use the bathroom. So, she allows them to go one at a time. Outside, Raymond and Grimes try to trace the officer who previously harassed Jania, but they are unable to locate him. Meanwhile, a crowd starts forming behind the police lines, calling for them to free Jania. Inside the bank, tensions rise once more when one of the tellers complains about the public treating Jania like a hero. So Nicole and the elderly customer quickly reprimand her for her lack of empathy. When Nicole notices that Jania is shivering in the cold air-conditioned room, she offers her a jacket. They step into an office, where Jania puts it on and notices a family photo on the desk. Their conversation shifts to motherhood, with Nicole reassuring Jania that she's a good mother, a fact she's known from watching Jania during her previous visits to the bank. Nicole gently encourages her to seek help, but Jania remains trapped in fear of Oliver. Later that evening, the FBI arrives and immediately takes charge of the situation. When she hears people shouting outside, Jania sends Nicole to the door to investigate. They discover that the growing crowd is chanting in support of Jania, carrying signs demanding justice for her. Even on the news, the protests have gained attention, and they see Benny speak passionately about her kindness, sharing how she always helped others despite her own hardships. Although the police chief pleads with the FBI to let them continue their peaceful negotiation, the FBI refuses to listen. In the meantime, Jania recalls that Nicole was the one who had encouraged her to open an account at this bank, and she begins to wonder why Nicole cares so deeply. So Nicole tells her that her motivation stems from years of watching working-class women suffer under the rigid systems. She had deliberately transferred to this location to assist people who often get overlooked. As the heat inside the bank becomes unbearable without the air conditioning, Jania tells them that this is about the same temperature she sleeps in every night at home. When the elderly woman offers her kind words, Jania breaks down, admitting that everything changed when Arya was hospitalized. Without insurance, her daughter was always treated poorly, even at birth. She confesses she wouldn't mind going to prison if not for Arya's illness, as she knew foster care wouldn't meet her medical needs. At this moment, Nicole vows to look after Arya, and this gives Jania some comfort. Suddenly, the elderly woman starts to feel unwell, and she reveals that she is diabetic. So, Jania allows Nicole to escort her out and apologizes once more. Once the woman is safe, Nicole ignores Raymond's desperate pleas to stay outside and returns inside, insisting that Jania has no one else. When the phone rings again, it's the FBI. They refuse to let Nicole speak to Raymond, causing Jania's panic to resurface. In the distress, she hands the phone to Nicole. As tension continues to escalate, the science project suddenly begins to beep again. Nicole, thinking the call triggered it, quickly hangs up. Jania calmly shuts it off and finally explains that it's just her daughter's science project. Shocked by this, Nicole and the tellers realize they had all mistaken it for a bomb. Sensing the gravity of the misunderstanding, Jania finally sees why the police and FBI have been so aggressive. At that moment, one of the tellers seizes the opportunity to write a message on the window using her lipstick, revealing to the outside that the bomb isn't real and there's only one gun involved. Jania urges Nicole to call the police to explain the truth, but Nicole hesitates, fearing that removing the perceived threat would prompt a sudden assault by the authorities. Instead, she suggests they all leave the bank together, without the backpack. Meanwhile, Raymond finally locates the officer who towed Jania's car and uncovers the truth. Initially reluctant, the officer eventually admits that Oliver was the one who threatened Jania. Enraged by this, Raymond confronts Oliver in front of the gathering crowd and punches him, as the crowd cheered. The police chief immediately removes Oliver from the scene. Back in the command truck, the phone continues to ring, but the FBI refuses to answer. Frustrated by their indifference, Raymond answers the call herself and informs Jania that Oliver has been arrested. Jania demands proof and agrees to surrender only if they send a photo confirming it's truly Oliver. However, the FBI is unwilling to wait, and they prepare to breach the bank. But Raymond acts swiftly as she rushes to the door and personally delivers the picture to Jania, who is finally convinced to release everyone. But in the end, Nicole chooses to stay with her knowing full well that Jania could likely be killed when she is alone. That was when Jania's mother calls her and delivers a devastating revelation. Arya had actually passed away from a seizure the night before. All of Jania's interactions with her daughter, the call from the school, and fears of social services were all hallucinations. In the end, Nicole reveals that she had known the truth, but had held back to avoid worsening the situation. As Jania struggles to process this, she imagines a violent FBI assault, but Nicole gently brings her back to reality. Ultimately, Nicole leads Jania out of the bank with their hands raised as Raymond carefully places her under arrest, and she is taken away as the crowd outside continues to show their support. And that is the recap of the 2025 psychological crime drama movie Straw. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more movie recaps like this on this channel, leave a comment for us, and also drop a like on the video. Thanks for watching.